And so what we'll be looking at mostly is, of course, the trading method using a set of key patterns. So that's what this kind of boils down to ultimately. And that's a bit of an oversimplification, but that's cool because this is obviously the intro day. And we'll be looking at a lot more than just that. But the main component of this is, of course, the harmonic patterns. And then there's the biggest reason, I suppose, of all, and that's why would you be interested in these patterns and looking at the markets in this particular way and approaching trade in this way. And it's quite simply because risk management and profit-taking components are in there in the mix. So it's a complete sort of setup for you.
Yeah, it's got targets, it's got stop losses, it's got entries. It goes through the whole trade entry, trades execution, and trades management process. And Harmonics, unlike many other forms of technical analysis, uses structural measurements, and so it gives people very specific requirements, which a lot of people like. They like to be able to say this is definitively one way or the other, which is difficult in charting. And so for people that are looking to answer those questions within a risk management framework, it's fantastic. That's the why.
Groovy, excellent, nice one. So I think there's something for everybody here in what we're doing, whether they're experienced or brand new to this, even if it just boils down to learning the language. So what background do you need to understand the foundations of harmonics? Really well? It's kind of like we were discussing there. It cuts both ways, really, with regards to traders. A lot of people who've been at this for years have developed their own way of looking at things and can be reticent to change, and of course, could develop bad habits along the way, etc. And then as well, for the new people that don't have any experience at all, some of these concepts can seem a bit difficult to digest along the way, but it's just a case of breaking it down, and that process in itself teaches you about the markets. So, I mean, a big question about this would be, like, do you know Fibonacci's already? And if you do,
yes, if you do, fantastic, because harmonics is very much, as I say, about structural measurements, and the way and tools in which we make those measurements is very much heavily based in Fibonacci sequences. So understanding Fibonacci, and not just how to draw the tool, but perhaps a degree of why certain levels are more important than others, and how to define those levels, or why we use those levels, should I say.
Great. And so essentially what background you need is nothing. You don't really need anything at all. The simple concepts that we'll be talking about become more complex over time, and this idea that Jamie's introducing just now with Fibonacci and measuring the market is actually a broad concept, really, and Scott Carney talks about this, how you should measure the market, etc. So that's the sort of thing that we'll be doing. It's a case of looking at the numbers as they're visualizing them in terms of the charts, and looking at the geometry, essentially how they relate to each other, and you can do that using these tools and techniques. Great. So wait a minute, did I skip one there? Yeah, so you've got loads of different stuff. So you might be sat there thinking, well, that's great because I already know about these different things, and these are the type of things that he talks about himself. So I just took this list out of his own background. Fibonacci, Elliott wave, Merrill waves, and Dow theory. And it kind of, in a sense, could be argued that this has led to harmonics. There's a few notable exceptions on that list. You might be thinking, oh, hey, what about these other great names out there, like Wells Wilder Jr.? Or what about some other great names that have featured in what you've learned so far? And that's a case of Scott Carney having his own sort of approach to looking at the markets, and that's a part of it. So the question kind of, is this a combination of all these, or is it simply inspired by it? It's difficult to pick that one apart, but it certainly isn't simply Fibonacci retracements, it isn't Elliott wave, it isn't Merrill waves, it isn't Dow theory, it isn't any of these things, but like everything, it builds on the shoulders of giants to a greater or lesser extent.
Especially the less early on the Elliott wave giant shoulder, but more on the other three.
Yep. Well, there's, you can benefit an awful lot by knowing about these topics already, which is true. If you don't, then that's cool, because in a sense, learning about harmonics bypasses a lot of that. So you've got topics that come from Elliott waves, such as like counting the waves, etc. And we won't really be talking about counting waves, so to speak, as we talk about harmonics. So you kind of bypass that, and then
it's more about structural waves than the 5 Elliott waves. You like to think that Elliott wave was a beautiful way of defining market structure, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's more about its MW.
That's it, right? Okay, so words like market structure come up a lot whenever Scott Carney's talking about something, and a background knowing about market structure can lead you down a certain route. I mean, we saw Gary Gensler, the chairman of the SEC, talking recently about how he needs to change market structure, and that's all to do with things like the interbank lending, etc., and how the mechanism behind the markets actually work. And then you've got market structure in terms of looking at the components within industries, etc. So you might have got different ideas about these key terms. Market structure is most commonly used when we look at charts on a daily basis on the show to just simply refer to the key highs and lows and pivot points in the market, and pivot points, of course, being discussed elsewhere in like Wells Wilder, etc., as opposed to necessarily here so much. But what we talk about with when Scott Carney talks about these things is in terms of how the market works in waves with regards to the structure within the market, working back up the way in terms of what I was just talking about there now. Great, brilliant stuff, and that leads me on to kind of pointing out that what we're really doing here in a sense is talking about language. And when it comes to understanding and communicating about charts, we use language, and Harmonics sets a framework for understanding and communicating price action. So what I was just doing there is kind of an example of that, and it's a bit difficult to digest, like I was saying at times, but also we break it down and you're left knowing these kind of terminologies. Now you will obviously have to then apply that in your own trading and understand these things the way that you want to understand them. And if you like to use Scott Carney's way of talking about things, develop your own proprietary methods, etc. But what we'll develop here will be, at least to a greater or lesser extent, a common understanding of the language that we would use when talking about certain concepts you need to understand to be able to communicate effectively about what's happening on the charts.
Scott Carney was very good at that, at using language to communicate those important and trenchant parts of his, let's call it, trading framework. And he specified certain things as being more important than others. And one of the ways he does that is using language. And frequently he'll talk about it, what he was saying, market structure and waves. And he'll talk about the flow of price action, and he'll talk about reaction versus reversals. And he'll be very specific in his application of language. And so in order to get the most out of his book and his way of doing things, it's good to adopt his meanings for your own.
Nice. Right, okay, and of course we've already got an existing sort of taxonomy that we already know and use on the channel on a daily basis, so most of it overlaps pretty neatly, and we would tend to point anything out at all if there was any sort of distinction that needed to be really kind of met. I think we're pretty good though, and a lot of the concepts that he likes to discuss are the same sorts of concepts that are discussed in a lot of different approaches as well, just to kind of build up an understanding. But it's kind of taken from the sort of Scott Carney approach, but it all integrates really well with everything that we already talk about. So there's no sort of newness that you really need to learn in terms of the language overall, apart from with the real specifics with the harmonic patterns, etc. And the way that you use the sort of methodology, if you like. Right. So that leads to this next question. In fact, was there a wee tip on this page that I missed here? Down here, look, does this make harmonics better? That was neat. I missed that one though. Over here as well, familiarity with market structure comes from learning and discussing these topics, and that's going to be useful for everybody as well, just to enhance that. So the question is it better? So Jamie, is harmonics better than or are harmonics? Is harmonics better than other trading approaches or technical analysis approaches?
Well, you're asking me, so I can be obtuse and long-winded in my answer, which is brilliant, and say that it isn't a yes or a no question, and it goes back to what you were saying before about how is technical analysis, how do you delineate that body of evidence and how people use things from harmonics? At what point did harmonics begin and those theories and structures that he relies upon end? And it's a murky line. It's very difficult to tell where the grass changes. So in that sense, does it make things better? Is it better? It's a hard question to answer, but it's also quite an easy question to answer in that all it does is try to make things better. It tries to make all these previous shoulders that we're standing on that little bit higher and secure and more reliable for what we go on to add to them. And it does a very good job of that. So much so that some people think that the greater body of other people's technical analysis and their contributions is actually made by Scott Carney in his interpretations of their strategy. So, does it make things better? I'd have to say yes, in maybe a slightly different way from what people might anticipate you answering that question. Because when people say what is better, how do you quantify what is better? And the way Scott Carney quantifies what is better is how far is price action going to move in the direction that's anticipated before it hits the anticipated stop loss or the suggested stop loss for that trade. And as such, it has been said that harmonics is very effective. You know, I don't like putting statistical percentages on that kind of thing, but it has been said to be very much effective.
Right, cool, excellent, nice one. Well, that's a really pretty decent answer. I would tend to agree with that. I'd also say as well that there's probably it's probably worth mentioning that what Scott Carney tries to do as well is to actually identify and name things that have obviously always been existent in markets anyway. So there's a degree of kind of ownership of that he would attribute to his own work and a degree of sort of recognition. It kind of boils down to that debate at times between invention versus discovery. I mean, is he inventing or is he discovering things here? But certainly, in terms of an approach, it's definitely a solid one, and that's cool. And I think it's pretty much fair to say that if in terms of what we're going to be discussing here, there's a pretty simple approach to just kind of answering that simple question. If we look at it from a basis of risk, harmonics forces you to trade within certain boundaries, and therefore you manage your risk. And if we look at it from reward, managing risk on the downside is only half the battle. Managing risk on the upside, i.e. your reward, is crucial, and that's also included in what we're kind of be discussing here. So that makes it better than at the very least.
Yes, well, the risk side of it means that it definitely isn't getting any worse. And the reward side of it is quite enlightening when you look at the ways in which it makes a difference to established trading strategies themselves, which are already successful. So, for example, the targets on moves might seem really counterintuitive or hard to understand or believe because their dollar value might be so high. But what he does is he uses ratios to create his measurements. And so things that might seem psychologically harder to accept are quantified a lot better, and it can lead to much more effective trading on the upside. So, you know, that side of things, like the nature of it is that's what it intends to do, and so if it doesn't, it's perhaps like user error.
Yeah, totally. And as a person, the Scott Carney is into developing, you know, quantifiable methodology, and he really likes being specific, you know, and that's a big thing of his, which we'll discover. And for a lot of people, that's better, you know, because you know people crave people crave structure. But then at the same time, you know, it's not everybody's cup of tea. There's also the body of research that towards technical analysis. It helps, at least even if you don't subscribe to what he says or think that there's different or better or whatever approaches, that it really helps to have that kind of counterpoint too. And he presents his information, at least in a replicable, scientific way, which and kind of, you know, is open to that kind of criticism and improvement, and you know, it actually welcomes it, just wants it to be of high quality. So it's like it's respectable in that sense, and it gives a good counter to anything else, you know, out there. So That's cool. That's where we are with this one, and we're going to just kind of carry that forward and see where it gets us, right?
Gets us to some confirmation variables, I suspect.
Yeah, but where does it get us, right? I mean, is this all theory or is it practice, etc.? And I think that there's a pretty neat answer to that overall here with this one. Harmonics aims to express a methodology for trading, and as such, there's a lot of theory, but the main component in there is, of course, the harmonic patterns themselves. And within that framework, you understand the market conditions, and thereby you're more able to execute trades and understand exactly where you are using these theories. So a lot of the practice that you would then be able to go on to do would definitely be informed by this theory. It's less theoretical theory, if you like, than just kind of discussing components about how the moving average might have a slope on it or something like that. So there's more kind of to get your teeth into.
It's much more of a discussion of, as you say, market conditions and specific market structure. And so in that sense, it's like to a degree more analytical in its own, more robust in its own analytical composition.
Cool. Yeah, totally. And a quick tip here for everybody is that you can totally and absolutely do this, and you can totally be a success. I mean, this is absolutely happening for you. If you never used harmonics to trade, you'll learn a lot about the markets. Even if you just decide to discard this and continue doing what otherwise you've been successful doing up till now, or if indeed you'd already started going down a particular route that you were experimenting on. And that's something I think that's probably a good point to interject at this point here, is that one of the people that Mark Carney looks up, or Scott Carney looks up to himself, is Mark Douglas, right? Getting all these names confused. The author of Trading in the Zone and all of that good stuff. And one of the things that he would talk about is the need for consistency. And he himself as well is kind of into that sort of scientific method, I should say, about him. And now the thing about it is about repeating, and trying and looking for results, and then after a series of experiments where you've got a decent data set, moving on to trying new things. So maybe I think if Scott Carney were to try and address one of his own role models in terms of, it says that you would attribute to the person that's probably taught him the most about markets or whatever, was in terms of an author or something like that. I don't know what he said about it, but he gives him a lot of praise. He would say to that, you should probably just keep doing what you're doing for now and all that sort of good stuff, and never just kind of pivot immediately into one thing from the next. Like that's just kind of as a decent rule for trading. If you're doing something at the minute and you're thinking, I'm going to do this for the next 10 trades, do that for the next 10 trades, and you can always learn here and take this kind of understanding with you as you kind of go forwards. So we're talking about patterns here that'll help you actually understand the markets and execute trades. And I've got this dodgy fellow on the phone here, giving you all your tips. And he's saying primarily
what he's doing is he's organising too many buy-to-let mortgages. That's what he's doing.
Yeah, he is on his. Is that a BlackBerry? Aye, it's BlackBerry there.
It? Nah, it's a Gash Nokia.
Is it a Nokia?
Yeah, on the way out back in the day.
Anyhows, what patterns have we got here? And the thing with what we're looking at, it's not like the encyclopedia of trading, which is this tomb of a book. It's not going to go through 1,000 different things. What instead here, what we're really looking at is primarily consists of two main things. Now, there's different names associated with these: Gartley, crab, whatever. But we've got na. And we've got really two main components here in the market. It's like the idea of W's and the idea of
the golden arches
of M's. The golden arches, right? So we've got these two different main shapes, and they compose the main patterns, and they're going to be bullish and bearish shapes, and it's interesting dynamics in the way that these things are named. So we'll all come across all of that later on. So of course you've got things like the Gartley, and that becomes the bullish Gartley, which is interesting because the shape of that is an M. It's looking like an M, but that's the bullish Gartley, and it's slightly distinct to other ideas. Now we can in terms of like the full and complete discussion go down the road of looking at of the complete sort of set of patterns, where Scott Carney will talk about like things like the harmonic head and shoulders, etc. And those are things that maybe we will cover at some point. But certainly in terms of like this course, in terms of where we can get to by Friday, we'll just be focusing on the main components here and understanding, getting a decent foundation to approaching this rather large topic. And we're starting off here just by simply kind of identifying the components there, where you've got this kind of the W shape or the M shape with regards to the main things that we're looking at here. It's to do with the oscillations in the market, how it normally
Measure
is.
the market.
That's it. Right, great, fantastic. Thanks for the interruption. These are measured using Fibonacci as well. That's a component. It's the way that we do this approach to the method, if you like, is to be measuring the market, and you measure the patterns, and that's what leads.
And we
to
measure them with ratios, and our tool is the Fibonacci. Sometimes the Fibonacci retracement tool, most commonly. Let's be honest.
That's the underpinnings of the science to it. We'll be using this sort of XABCD tool on the trading view, and we do actually look at these sorts of things, or maybe not even, maybe just using all the examples from the textbook itself and pointing to them instead, because you can use whatever way you like to measure it out and draw it out, bit of both, whatever, right? No promises here. But the thing is, this is the idea, right? This is what it boils down to. Those are the patterns that we're talking about. You might have heard of them. They're called the harmonic patterns, and you might have heard of things like the bullish Gartley or the bearish crab, right? And Scott Carney, by the way, as Jamie referred to earlier on, thinks most of the work done outside of what he's kind of published about it is pretty naff. So what we're going to do is not really go into any massively expanded material outside of even what he does, even at a push, the harmonic head and shoulders. But what we're going to really focus on is the main components of harmonics, as he first published really in his book in 1997.
Yeah, he's been doing a good job, and we'd like to add to the understanding and articulation of those aspects of his ideas which are most effective, and we're going to approach that in the way that you're going to be most able to learn, we think, if we were you. Anyway, that's the idea.
Hopefully. And these types of patterns, by the way, they also do correspond and work well in terms of looking at the analysis that you would already be looking at. So again, you don't need to go for a massive abrupt departure from whatever you're already trading. You can look at these things and kind of say, well, hey, I'm not going to look for one of those patterns that they were talking about today. I'm going to just look at what I'm looking at already. That's all fine.
It's not like there always is a pattern anyway. It's not like some aspects of trading where you can say it's always in a phase. It could be moving between.
Yeah. It could be moving between two phases. Within those phases where it's moving between, you'll find that it quite often does have patterns within them, different time frames, etc.
Are they reactions? Are they reversals?
Yeah. So these are the things that we'll be discussing. There's minimum time frames that you want to be looking at to kind of identify these patterns. There's the rules that go along with the patterns in terms of where you would want to see retracements to, and what sort of highs you'd be looking to and lows you'd be looking to whether you're taking them out or not.
Those rules are very, very specific, and unlike some types of frameworks for trading, they rely exactly on what actually happened, not body closes, but wicks. You have to take that into account. You can't say, oh, this only happen for this amount of time. You have to look at, obviously there are aspects to that come on higher time frames, but you have to really be following along with reversals and like where areas hold with regards to previous identified target zones, and if it goes beyond them, then it validates things immediately, and it doesn't always necessarily give you a trade on the other side to take either. So those rules you're talking about are very specific, and in some ways that's really, really helpful because it means that you don't take crap trades. And that's why I like harmonics the most, is because it gives you like the things you like too, like a lot of chocolate on your biscuit, and it doesn't tell you when it kind of tells you like, because there's a number of confirmatory variables and you need to have a certain number of them for it to have a certain degree of success. But when you get so very many of them, you get such a high chance of success if you're using it properly, that you can use, and you get such long, deep moves, and you can identify them early, like even ahead of the phase. and that's why I like harmonics.
Okay, so the thing about these are as well that to understand what we're doing here is you are benefited by having an understanding of technical analysis, and in general you are benefited from it. But this is going to help give you that understanding. But what Scott Carney talks about as well when he talks about this, which is the only thing he talks about, so fair enough, is he talks about that it fits into your technical analysis. You know, it's to be used alongside, just like really the other sort of big things that have been published out there. Really, they always kind of talk about how it should be used alongside the other analysis you'd be doing anyway. And you do get into kind of quite advanced techniques with regards to harmonics, which if you were to study it in full, which are actually quite similar to the techniques that we'd be using, or you might be using anyway, in combination with harmonics. That's what kind of makes things advanced in that way when you bake a cake and you put different ingredients in. All in the purpose, obviously, of tightening up your trading and becoming a more effective trader. And as well, Jimmy was talking there about the kind of the strict rules. And for some people, that might sound a bit off-putting because you might think, hey, you know, rules, bro, I don't want no rules. Well, fair enough. There are degrees of tolerance where the patterns can go, because you might be thinking, oh, how could I ever get it to be so precise? Well, there are degrees of tolerance that you're allowed to have, and it's greater and lesser for different patterns, etc. But we'll be just kind of focusing, obviously, on the concepts as they are and how they fit in, and that's all going to be really, really, really great. And now this whole thing about the big chocolate on your biscuits and all the rest of it, obviously, it's just like anything else. There's the human element in trading is still always one of the biggest, if not the biggest, component of anything, and requires, you know, a winning attitude and everything else, you know, in that. So right,
This
great.
won't help you get a winning attitude, but it will help you define market structure.
And give you that confidence, right?
Yeah.
And that knowledge that you need.
It'll help you understand price formations and like how they appear on charts and their likely outcomes of certain types of things. You'll probably, in initial understanding of it, be good at looking back and seeing how it all works retrospectively. Developing the ability to use it to help your trading is a whole other thing. But we'll cover that over the next few days.
Yep, totally. And so, you know, what's different then, and this, so because we're coming towards the end of this sort of first presentation now, and the sort of typical things that people would obviously want to know about this is then what's different. And I think a lot of that's been expressed so far by what we've been talking about, but a lot of it boils down to the precision, the rules, the scientific method, and so forth.
Its ability to define markets characteristics and structure characteristics, and to define patterns in a new way that hadn't been done before. You can notice patterns maybe looking at charts, and you might think to yourself, oh, this pattern, and when you use that word and that type of language, you might mean a pattern that's a repeat of some previous behavior, and you think that that's because it's repetition, it means it's a pattern. And to a certain extent that's true, but that's not effective technical analysis. Then there's the pattern analysis of Bulkowski and his type of measured move and how he looked at things. But this is a whole extra dimension to looking at patterns with regards to that exact thing of market structure and structural characteristics, and encompassing reversals versus reactions.
Yeah.
And then building that into actionable trading strategies. And that's so much of what this is about. Like the whole point of Harmonics was, because it came from his group and his trading group, and because of his background and the way the thing evolved, was so much about making it effective. And like even in the nature of the way that Harmonics itself took off before he even managed to get like really good books written in that, like because of that, like how effective it was, and because it was effective in a real practical sense, it's really good for people who want to get good at trading.
Yeah.
You know, it really
well,
is.
the thing about Harmonics that you might notice as we go through this is it's not actually that dissimilar to the type of thing that I present on the show on a daily basis as I run through the technical analysis. It's you could argue that the things that I do are more advanced in a way from just simply looking at price action alone, because at times, you think that when you're looking at harmonics that it's missing some components. So people might argue things like, well, Rocky looks a lot more at volume maybe, or Rocky looks a lot more at different oscillators, or etc. Now,
momentum.
Yeah,
all the time.
And that's fine, but it doesn't actually make what I do necessarily any better. I think it's probably worth pointing that out. I often talk as well about how you can have two completely opposing diametric viewpoints in the markets and then both be accurate, and it's an amazing, really quite an amazing thing. So one such example of which, and this is an overlap with a probable frequently asked question with regards to this whole topic, is, you know, how about whenever you've got a harmonic pattern that looks like it's going to go up through a particular horizontal level? And a lot of people will put a lot more weight on that horizontal level, and that's okay. And a lot of people put more weight on the harmonic pattern. Now, the harmonic approach is to say that it works kind of regardless of history, with the markets. It looks beyond horizontals, and that kind of can be quite appealing to people who think, well, I've used horizontals a lot, support and resistance levels I'm talking about here, and I found that they fail, they don't work for me. Brilliant, maybe this is your cup of tea. And then a lot of other people out there are like, no, I can't buy into this. My bread and butter, is just plain support and resistance. That's all it is. And it's like, that's fine. What we're going to talk about is a lot about the markets as well, and like the movements around them, and it's kind of okay to sort of disagree, because one of the big things about this is a lot less wishy-washy than Elliott wave or any of that. So it's like, it's fine, it's
Elliott wave's pretty. It's really nice and pretty. Elliott wave is very, very pretty.
Right, great. So, just to acknowledge again, that the strict rules can be open to some, but it's actually possibly as well one of the most popular aspects about harmonics, and we'll be kind of reconciling that by being just cool dudes in the middle of it all. And as well, it's good to recognise that people do, of course, crave structure, like we mentioned earlier on. It's true, and we all kind of benefit from having a strict way of looking at markets around certain movements, especially whenever there could be experiencing a degree of volatility, etc. So one example that he uses commonly to talk about himself and the harmonics and harmonic pressure as a concept is the 1618 Fibonacci extension point that the SPY moved to back in the bull run that happened, from 2008 lows up to 2015-16 region, and fantastic example. It's typical of the sort of thing that we talk about in the show all the time. He talks about the patterns. He recognizes kind of harmonic pressure, sort of thing that essentially implicitly is what I've been doing a lot of the time, but it puts a kind of label on it and defines it in a particular structure, which you do or do not have to agree with, and all these things are open to interpretation. Anyway, and that's what this is, right?
Yeah, even if you don't like it, it's like Elliott wave in that learning it at least gives you confirmations to things that you might have learned elsewhere. So for example, you're really good at using a strategy on the MACD, and then you add on top, well, maybe like it's not particularly relevant, but say you were, and then you add on top of it all of these statistically reliable outcomes from good use of the confirmatory variables that go into taking measured ratios and developing good trading based on harmonics. If you can see when you do all that, like, oh, these signals all go around at the same time that my momentum signals all suggest trades, then you can really improve that top side of your trades. That's what's so good about harmonic, is it doesn't affect anything or make anything worse to any trading strategy you've got. It just adds on potential extra ways of like lengthening the top side.
But not to kind of undermine the fantastic work that Jamie and myself have been doing, of course, and have always done, and probably no doubt all of you have all been doing as well, with regards to your own trading across the piece, because we always talk about risk management anyway, and that's what trading is. And for me, that's what trading always is anyway. So for a lot of people, these concepts might just seem, in terms of their presentation, somewhat grandiose or self-aggrandizing in terms of like saying how unique it is to have that perspective in the market. It isn't actually unique to harmonics, but as in terms of an introduction to having these types of mentalities, it's really good. So you'll find that there's this concept. We'll cover all of this and more later, of the PRZ, the the potential reversal zone, and that's where you're going to be looking to, of course, execute a lot of your trades.
You're going to learn to love PRZ.
Now, the thing about it is that you're going to have different kind of cut-off points at where you would manage your risk at along with this thing. So that goes hand in hand, and it's typical of how we would look at markets and taking trades anyway. A lot of this will boil down to your own interpretations, and while you're going to be looking at your own sort of things outside of this whole thing to do with like position size and etc. All of that doesn't actually get encompassed in terms of what we're talking here. This is a component of technical analysis called harmonics, which will help inform your trading and understand the markets. But it doesn't actually. It doesn't. Yeah. It doesn't.
It also includes laterally in Scott Carney's work. He talked about his harmonic strength index, which is heavily inspired by one of his heroes and Rocky's heroes.
We want to talk about that much, do you?
No, not right now. We'll
not
now.
No,
but
we'll talk about it during the course.
But like it does not as well as that aspect to what we'll talk about. It does come in with all of these practical tools themselves built from it, not just using some button on TradingView here and there. It does have its own encompassing suite of tools, so to speak.
Yeah, so totally. We can introduce the indicator that Scott Carney kind of put together as well to go along with this as well at the end. But the thing about it is as well, it's worth mentioning because this has to be accessible to all, and that this is the harmonics component essentially of a broader topic of what is technical analysis and an approach to markets and everything else. So that's what we'll be focusing on primarily, and the harmonic patterns as the main component of that, just as the beads is the main component of the body of work that represents Scott Carney's life achievement. So here we are in closing, and we're going to try and develop a way of teaching this information through feedback with y'all through the Discord and all of that. So the aim here is sort of a you scratch our back, we scratch your back sort of thing. Help all of you by teaching you this stuff, and then this information will help us put our sort of course together and make sure that we're presenting the information in the most approachable, accessible way as we can, and really trying to do a good job with it. And if you can give us, your feedback, I wrote testimonials in there because it was just made me lol. But the thing about it is, constructive criticism is going to probably be quite useful. And then what's coming up next in this thing is that we hope to be able to get to the point where we've kind of explained enough about about what we're doing here that we can address the topic of the 3 steps to harmonic trading, which is not actually going ahead and doing any of this stuff or any of that. It's actually just kind of understanding what it is that you go through in the process of trading, like what the
trade identification,
exactly. So
trade execution, trade management.
Brilliant. And these M and W patterns that we'll be talking about, you can look at them as terms of a chunk of time where you'd be kind of analyzing, a chunk of time where you would have an opportunity to execute a trade, and then a chunk of time afterwards where you're managing that trade or it's been proven to not be successful at that point. And that is essentially trading all round. So it's a concept that's worth talking about, but we're not actually going to take in and do all the details because that's going to be over the course of the week. Right, brilliant. So essentially, let's learn together. Everybody talk in the technical analysis room in the Discord, etc. I should stop saying etc, shouldn't I? Join us for the live streams every weekday on YouTube to see live price action. We'll not actually be using harmonics on the charts, to be honest. It's right now. Introduce your friends. Learning together is quicker and more rewarding. Brilliant.
Thanks so much for tuning in, and thanks Rocky for having me on again.
Yeah, it's cool. Nice one. No problem. Well, I guess maybe we should chat to people for a while now and whatnot. We're here.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
You're welcome. Great. I'm going to put the kettle on, but I can still hear everything.
Cool. So yeah, well that's it, right? I mean, I would say we'll do a question and answer session, but I want to hear what you. Yeah, I want to hear what you guys think. What your desired things. Jimmy's saying I want to hear your desired learning outcomes. Yeah, so like that's true. I want to hear that sort of stuff. What you guys want to know from all this and that. So hit me.
I thought it was good. I think personally, like Jamie just said it best, is like, what are we each going to get out of it? So I think for me, I just want to learn some strategies that I can like apply right away.
Same.
Brilliant.
I'm really excited about this. I have trouble focusing on a lot of stuff, so something a little more personal like this, and I've been wanting to learn harmonic trading for a while now. I look at the Garni pattern, and I spend a couple hours trying to study it on my own at night, and everything is so technical and so dry, and the angles are so minutely different from the ABCD, X, Y, whatever, that it's just easy to get distracted, to move on and take a break. Like, so
Yes,
having
could be
here,
fucking boring.
Fucking right.
yeah. So having all this here is I'm really optimistic about it.
So like the guy himself when he does stuff, I don't know if there's I think there's a whole bunch of videos that he's got himself, and it's well, I mean, I don't know if you can hear my audio, but you can see his own thing there, and it's also very dry. It's difficult. It's difficult to we hopefully we'll bring a bit of kind of fun along with it as we do this sort of stuff. But maybe actually this is a good resource for us as we do this to use his own. He's got the stuff here. He's talking about stuff, but we can talk about it and just use his visuals maybe in a way to
At the
kind of
50
explain what's
level
going on.
because of that low reciprocal ABCD.
It's a good idea.
Because of that low reciprocal ABCD. So it's quite hard to kind of follow along with them at times.
Yeah. And
Bit
he has a
Poindexter.
habit of using the same phrase over and over, which can be hard. Instead of explaining it in a slightly different way, which is also helpful with these interactive things. You know, like if we say something and you don't understand, and you ask us like after an explanation, say you still don't understand, um, then we could explain it in a different way. You know, which is slightly better than on the YouTube stream. You don't get that opportunity.
Oh yeah, the direct feedback and stuff like that's pretty cool.
Like at the time.
We can do something, and maybe there's a way of having a well, not maybe there's definitely we could just have a little text room here in the Discord, and we could put chat in as it's going along, and we could have that open and check and see what's going on with questions that come in from time to time from people, and then take breaks. We could do and we could have other people come on and talk and do stuff. I don't know, like so we can do all sorts of stuff here with this interactiveness.
Yeah, people want to see it, how to put actionable trading strategies. That's so much what people want all the time. It's just that it's funny that the counterintuitive aspect of any good trading strategy, let's call it that, even though the terminology is horrible, is that like it'll only tell you like trades that are going to work, and they're most commonly they're less frequent, especially if they're big moves. So while it does do that, it does give you like actionable trading strategies. It does mean that you'll spend maybe, you know, like a significant amount of time sitting on your hands, which is really good because like Rocky and I have tried to say for ages, like it's like the trading part of things is like one or two, maybe 7 clicks. The learning and the planning and the preparation and the reasoning for taking trades is like for me it's like an hour or two usually at least, whereas the clicks and the ordering it and the putting it, you know, it takes seconds.
Well, it depends. Sometimes you take a trade quite quickly or whatever, but not necessarily off of these reasons. I mean, one of the things that he talks about is just simply that the risk to reward isn't often there on the small time frames to really warrant it. I hinted at the same sort of thing today in my show when I was talking about these things. It's like, what can you really do at certain times when you know that you're between two zones? Scott Carney talks about markets seeking out equilibrium, and it's also something that I talk about all the time. You know, in terms of the things that I look for in markets. You know, it's like sometimes there are moves that look absurd, but really, you know, and when times the sufficient amount of time has gone by and you look back, you think that wasn't absurd. That's actually just how that went. And there's a component there in terms of like how can we label and identify and exploit and extract and quantify and measure these things. And I mean,
yeah. So like for example, I did a 1618 retracement on Rolls Royce when it was like whatever it was, like slow there, and somebody shared that clip in the Rolls-Royce subreddit for people trading, and they thought they said it was all ridiculous. They thought it was ridiculous, but actually, like it's when you zoom out and look at the chart, people were like, "What does zoom out in that? How does it make it better?" Well, when you look at everything that's happened since, you can see like it's all just natural oscillations. It's a resonance, and that's why he called it harmonics.
Yeah, the sort of this idea as well, where he talked about harmonic pressure. It's like similar when I was talking about. Well, I mean, I've done it so many times, and I was laughing today about the AMD one, and I still can't. I don't actually still don't honestly know who did that chart. Don't care. But it was like the 1618, and it was like there you go, like a massive risk to reward move on that potential. It was like huge, but it takes like obviously there's no guarantee of it actually happening, but that's what you're looking to, and understanding the market dynamics there, and where would it be if it went there. So like things recently, like with Dogecoin going up to, I mean, I can't remember what it was off the top of my head for that one either, but I said something like, no, but it was the same basic concept, where it's like you're looking to go up towards a Fibonacci extension up above, and the components that can take you there might be, definable in the ways of these patterns, etc. I mean, I know that they are in a lot of times.
I just posted about Rolls-Royce. You should at least post about Dogecoin.
But I don't. I'm pretty.
You also posted about the Bitcoin high.
Well, I mean, I don't care particularly, but I mean, somebody shared it in the Rolls-Royce thing, hey? It's like nobody shares. If anybody had shared that Dogecoin thing over in our cryptocurrency, there might have been a good laugh about it. And then whenever I came back to do it next time, I might have not just said fuck it and decided not to do cryptocurrency at all for the next 3 months. So like, who knows what might have passed out, might have happened. But that's basically it for today. Bring a bit of fun to it, a bit of personality. What is? Oh shit! No, there was one or two things. No, there was one or two, but I want to hear more. It's just because Jamie, you talk too much. Let everybody else talk to me. God, don't listen to him. What does anybody else think? Somebody's volume is too low.
I want you to dive deep into the math.
Shit, man. I hate math, though.
Well, that's what it is, right? That's my brain.
Right, cool. I mean, the thing about this is, at least it benefits from the fact that the math that's involved here has a lot to do with the geometry of the charts, and not writing out not calculating it by hand, but like looking at it on a screen at least, and being able to see the components there. Now, in terms of like the getting deep into the maths element, there's like the explaining the Fibonacci ratios from a point of view of mathematics has been done perfectly by far better mathematicians and explainers of maths than I am. So it kind of seems like it's like
You don't have to explain the nature of pi and its role in progression and nature cycles. You don't. You just have to understand the concept of the golden ratio. That's the important one, which is why it's the 618, the 1618, the 41618. Right. That's why it's
that's what I want to know. Like why
we can talk about that.
Why the fib levels are important.
Yeah, and then so some of them are because of that. Others are because of or built upon the understanding that Dow had, and Dow did most of his stuff in thirds and halves. So there's that. There's the little bits of the XABCD, all of the working out little bits. There's tiny bits of maths there, and then
well, the thing about
but the greater part of it's based on linear and linear progressions and regressions from Gann theory, and that stuff's really quite easy maths.
It's fine. The thing is going to be it's implicit in there in terms of so much that we look at explores that when we'll be talking about the components of the different patterns. It's a case of having to identify them on the charts, and finding them is kind of half the battle, and that there is an exploration in detail of that mathematics as well. So like we'll be doing it all at once, I guess, right? I guess so. But that's cool. We want detail. But you see, the thing about it is we want to make it accessible to everybody. So the components with detail in them.
Like text me.
Yeah, man. Right, set. Yeah, has anybody heard of this harmonics thing before? Or whatever? Because to me, I don't know if it's I don't know how I don't really follow up on how what everybody else knows about very often. So does anybody know about this thing already? Right, cool. If
In
anybody does know
finance?
about this thing, about harmonics, yeah, if anybody does know about it and wants to take part in this whole process, and present a bit or anything like that, then you're more than welcome to, and we can fit it in as part of what we're doing here, and learning together. I mean, there's like this idea of let's learn together. I think is kind of what underpins it. You don't have to, but then that's something to think about. That's something to think about as well, and we can kind of look at examples. Suppose there's other ideas that have come up recently with chats with people. Is it like after we're done with all this sort of teaching aspect of it, then we could do through a process of like the following week, looking up. People could submit their chart screenshots of a pattern drawn on, and we could all discuss it as a group together, etc. That sort of thing.
Yeah, well, it was add a nice aspect to the live videos in that people could come along and say, "Oh, I think there's a bullish Gartley on Nike or whatever," and we can look at it and check it out and see if it conforms to what a bullish Bartley is, and do it together, and everyone will see it together, and people who've watched the live stream will then see that there's a progression in what everybody else is learning. That'd be great for everybody to watch along that doesn't like know that that's happening and just thinks it's entertainment.
Totally. Nice one. Nice one. We'll talk about that. The things that it's the sort of thing as well we talk about in terms of on the channel in terms of like Fibonacci retracements and that. With when Bitcoin was going up towards the highs there, I was looking at it inside this wedge that it was forming, and then measuring out the Fibonacci's and talking about the potential upside moves that would happen off the back of them up the way, and kind of the way I described it was like that. It was like the like zooming in on the fingerprint of what a wedge was, and understanding it all built together. I mean, and I appreciate that nobody wants to go back and watch hours and hours of live streaming content from the markets 3 months ago or whatever. But like that's kind of the sort of thing that we do talk about on the channel anyway.
Stop streaming.
No, they would have
It's
stopped
because
streaming.
you're going to do it again and again and again.
All right.
If you just stopped, then they'd have to watch it back.
Fair enough.
I'm not going to get it anywhere else.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, cool. So that's us. Shall we just resume the party? I mean, somebody can whack the music up. I'll stop sharing my screen, and everybody can chat away. Unless you want to chat more about what we're talking about here.
Or if you have any questions.
Yeah, sorry. This FU here. There are a couple of people asking for a text channel to discuss the harmonic trading thing, and I know you guys talked about that.
Sure.
I'm ready to implement it, even while you guys are here doing that. But I was wondering if you wanted it to be in the education section, if you think it should be more suited for the video,
Yeah, it
like the
should
audio
be.
section, just to separate it from other. How do you want that?
Those are good questions, man. The education section, and is that education section actually visible to everybody? I know it gets like
No, it's
0
not.
posts. It's
It's
not.
not.
Right. Well, let's just
I
open
can
that
make
up
them visible.
or whatever. We'll do something. Yeah, we'll figure.
An official education.
Yeah, we'll have like an education section, I guess, right? And we'll open this back up, but it won't be something that is like that. It's something for everybody to use. It's not a top-down pyramid hierarchical thing. Let's use it as a community thing. So it's got 4 rooms in there, like trading, discussion, trading, education, or whatever. And I suppose it separates out. I don't know. It might be too much. It might be too watered down too much. Man, these are totally our decisions though that we can make again, I suppose, together over time. But let's just go for that for now. Stick education room in the trading the trading education section. We just open that up. It's got nothing in there. It's like months old. So yeah, we'll just right. Yeah.
Explain threads to people. That would
Threads. Oh, aye. So here in Discord, right? Yeah. Great. Good one. Good discussion topic, right? Threads on Discord. So I'll bring up Discord just here, and I'll go to my Discord so you can see what I'm doing. So we've got this is us here, and say we wanted to have we were having a discussion in the tea room about this thing here that modules just shared. Then what we can do is unfortunately, that just was blocking the button. What we can do is we can hit create thread, and we can call it whatever we want, for example. And then this thread here will then create it, and it is then available to be seen on the list here underneath the tea room. So if you just see just there underneath the tea room, it says example now, and this is a conversation which has which links back to the original post by module. So you can see in here that a thread was started called example. When this thing ends, it'll be archived and left there. So if there was a really funny picture we all were chatting about or something, and you wanted to go back and see the conversation that happened about this really funny picture in 10 years' time, you'd be able to see the archive thread down there. But then while it's active, then it's listed here. So if you're a part of it, so to find them, then it's underneath a message. When you're in it, then you can chat with people, and it's like a private conversation. Not private; it's a public conversation that comes up separate to the main chat. And then when I set it up there, I chose 24 hours. So there's different options that you can choose. So this one here, if nobody comments in it for 24 hours, then it will be disbanded. And there are other ones that already exist out there. So there's one that's where guys and girls have been chatting about meditation. I guess the sort of the meditation room hasn't been worked. Oh, no, there's also a meditation room as whatever. Anyway, there's all these different threads around, and that's them, and that's how you use them. Woo!
The easiest way, see up there where you have it now, the hash, that hashtag there,
Aye,
where
there's
your
like
mouse is.
yeah, you
If you
click on
just click
that,
the
create.
hashtag up there,
Yeah.
no, the top, it'll show you all the threads
Oh, right. Great, cool.
beside the
So,
pin, if you know what I mean. Because most
nice
people don't
one,
look to the
man.
left.
So up here, there's 2 threads. Brilliant. Meditation on the rocks, an example. Brilliant. So that's how you see the current threads. And that makes things neat because a good example of that could be, if people wanted to use it, would be if there was like a video in the YouTube section or whatever, and somebody had posted where is it? It's so far away from my face. Right, so say for instance everybody wanted to talk about my latest or my video or whatever, this was bra or something, then you could create a thread about it. I don't know, that's an example, that's an ego-driven one, but that's cool. That was easy to come up with. But there's plenty of better examples. So that's how they work. Brilliant that you can see how many of them, the ones that are already there. I didn't realize that.
They said I could be anything, I became a disappointment. Hardy har, I like that one. I like that one.
Nice one.
Okay, thank you then.
You wanted to go, right?
Jimmy's
Thank
going to
you.
pass it on. They're the best. Look at that. It is going to explode. Look at that.
Hey. Nice
Cheers,
one.
guys.
Jimmy
I
invited
think
me.
there's a lot of those if you scroll
Thanks,
up. There's
Rocky.
more of those in that channel.
Oh, you're welcome, everybody.
Jimmy's going to explode.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Yes, we'll
Awesome.
create this. We'll create a place to discuss this, and we'll discuss this, and it will be great. And then we'll be able to get all your feedback there, which means that you don't have to feel so embarrassed when you call me a shitface. Great, nice one, excellent.
And some people might have been tuning in and expecting today and to have some answer like tomorrow to start making money. And if that was the case, well, you're going to have to wait until at least Friday to get through that stage.
It's my
Thank you
money.
for
I'll
doing that.
move now.
It's about finding
So, hey,
a balance, right?
guys,
Yeah.
we're only 10 boosts away from level 3 too, by the way, everybody.
Does level 3 mean that I get to stream video with more people?
I think there is higher bandwidth on level 3
Yeah,
servers, but I'd have
there
to
is.
be.
Getting
Brilliant.
close
Okay.
though.
Yeah,
Apparently,
getting
I
close.
had 2, not just 1. So I just boosted 1 more. I don't know if that
Nice.
does anything or gets us any closer.
Nice one. It does. Well, it does. That's exactly it.
Creep
Let me
in.
see. We can go into the back end. An insight for people. Where's the nitro boost? Server boost status over here. So level 2 perks. These are what we're getting so far, and we should really make better use of these. So these are ideas for people. We get server emoji slots, so there's more emoji slots. Now we could have more personal personal emojis to use here, for this server, so people can make them and create them and suggest them and all that good stuff. And then there is level 3 perks: more emojis, better audio, upload limits. You can upload all your selfies, 30 custom sticker slots for a total of 60. Vanity URL for the server. Oh, I don't know. I don't know if it does give you more. That sucks if you can't. Well, I don't know.
So you can only do video weeks.
So how does it work?
Pardon?
How does it work?
I don't know what
Yeah.
I don't know what the boost. I don't know what those are the benefits of the boost right there. I honestly don't know whether or not we even want those things. I mean, until such things as we've got more than 50 emojis, we don't really want necessarily that. I don't really know.
Quality and the bandwidth.
The only thing that might be relevant there is the audio quality, and if
Audio quality,
bandwidth issues, that's
And the
only
bandwidth, But
Yeah.
I didn't need.
The bandwidth
Are there
is-
people waiting outside, trying to come into the general now, or like, did we need more spots?
I don't know.
Sounds like it might be time for an emoji making contest.
That'd be fun.
Yes, an
I
emoji
want our
making
fan
contest.
sticker back.
Contest, obviously.
Contest.
Yeah.
Somebody say contest.
Yeah. Oh, we need to make stickers, because stickers is a thing, right? Stickers. There's stickers you
Oh
can
my
add
god,
them
I'm
to your.
excited.
Now, worth noting that stickers are only available
Anything else to do?
What were you saying there, FU man? Stickers only
Sorry.
available what?
They're only available to people paying Discord $100 a year for Nitro. So
Ha!
a very
Yeah, I
limited
know they're a bit.
subset of people will be available to use those.
So just emojis.
Yeah.
But
Like, I'm
still,
paying
if you wanted,
Discord.
if
You also
you
get
want to design
Nitro with
stickers.
Amazon Prime if you sold your soul.
Ooh.
What if you sold it
Where
a
do you
long
sell it
time
at?
ago?
Hey
Where
guys.
do you sell it at? Can you get good money for that?
Can I buy some more?
How much is it worth?
Mine's used.
Ah.
Used soul.
Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you, Rocky.
Thanks, Rocky.
Cheers, guys.
Thanks for the session.
Bye guys. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye.